Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Meaningful People podcast. My name is Nachi Gordon.
And my name is Yaakov Linger.
And you're listening to the best show in the world.
And this week, we got to sit down with someone that we were both looking so forward to having on. We wanted to make sure it was a time where it was right. It was just right to have him.
Yeah.
And he is so busy because he's giving shirim and saving Klal Yisrael. He's probably cringing as he listens to this. The one, the only...
Rabbi Aryeh Lebowitz, all the way from North Woodmere, the Rav of BKNW, that's Beis Haknesses of North Woodmere. He probably has of the most shirim in the online world.
I think it's we weren't sure. I think he has the most shirim, or he produces the most shirim, which online, which is wild. And you get to hear his process in this episode. You get to hear why he's on Twitter. It's kind of interesting. He's like,
you get to hear also what it means to like serve on a Geiris Besdin.
Yeah.
Involved with Geirising on Besdin.
Yeah, there's a lot of Besdining going on. But and he's such an unav. Like when we reached out to him, he's like, he's a fan, so we get to delve. It's a little meta, and we learn what the word meta is in this episode. Like discussing with a, I guess, fan of the show, but also we're a fan of his, and he was great. Just all around a breath of fresh air.
For his kids who are listening, who said, Daddy, Abba, Tati, what are you gonna talk about? Like, what do I want to ask you? Your father's pretty cool. Okay,
yeah, he's very cool, and he really like kind of
shout out to you.
Fight us, but he's like, no, you have so many better people to do. You don't have to do me. And we're like, boom, that's exactly the answer we want to hear.
Exactly. So guys,
getting on.
Give a listen.
Welcome to the Meaningful People podcast, the podcast where we talk to people who are
meaningful.
Yeah, that sounds good.
It's a beautiful Tuesday morning. It's Tuesday?
Yes, it is.
It's a beautiful Tuesday morning. Here we are in Cedarhurst, New York, joined by Rabbi Aryeh Lebowitz. Thank you so much.
I want to introduce him as maybe the first time, a very big fan of the podcast.
I am a big fan of the podcast, as is my whole family.
Oh, really?
We talk about it.
Okay. It gives us a lot of chizuk.
Also known as BKNW Rabbi on Twitter.
Yes.
BKNW Rabbi.
Yes. But even from the beginning, it gave us a lot of chizuk to see, you quote Gedolim a lot on Twitter, and we'll get into the Twitter universe. Twitterverse.
Come on, Yaakov.
Or from Twitterverse.
Just stick with Twitterverse.
And even from the beginning, we saw you quoting some, maybe it's from Rabbi Eitan Feiner, an episode, a quote, or whoever we had on, and it gave Nachi and I tremendous chizuk.
Yeah.
Well, when you're in the rabbi business, you're always looking for inspiration. Meaning, if I was told by a rabbi a long time ago, if someone comes over you at Kiddush and tells you a joke, there's only one thought that goes through your head. Can I use this? If you can't use it, forget it.
Right.
So you're always looking for good stories and inspiration, and you guys just have the best people. I mean, my kids last night were like, why are they interviewing you?
Oh, come on.
I said, because I dressed up as Yaakov on Purim. That's why they're interviewing me. But
that gave me a lot of chizuk also, unrelated to this podcast.
Yeah.
He would sign, I do it together with Aim Humor, and on Purim, I saw you dressed as me.
This is a great trend.
Yeah. Oh, no, thank you for the honor. But okay, so we're talking about Rabbanis, and classic question that we're gonna get to is like, did you envision yourself becoming a Rav?
So I think since I know the whole history of this show, because I've listened to most of them on double speed usually, but I've listened to most of them. Like everybody else, I was going to be a lawyer.
Oh, okay.
There used to be a television show when I was a kid that was called L.A. Law. Totally inappropriate for a child to watch that television show, but I did. And the beginning of the show had like a California license plate that said L.A. Law. And my initials are A.L. So I always imagined I was going to have vanity plates that say A.L. Law, and like my whole life, my parents always said, you're going to be a great lawyer. You're going to be, and like I always that was the plan. So that changed at some point.
I'm just imagining you're a kihila, someone's listening that's like, okay, great Hanukkah present right over there.
Yeah, well, that's good.
That would be a terrible Hanukkah.
So I guess take us, through that from your childhood to today a little bit, I guess.
So this is the part that I was saying, like my kids were asking why in the world you would want to interview me, because like it's very normal, very run-of-the-mill. Thank God I have normal parents who are wonderful. My siblings are all from and kind.
Your
and
siblings didn't
people.
try to sell you as a kid? Like,
My siblings, right, exactly. I wasn't smoking marijuana at 9 like Mr. Black. I wasn't, just regular upbringing. I went to South Shore locally, grew up here in the 5 towns. Everything was great and normal.
Well, thank you so much for coming. This has been great.
Let's jump into, I guess, Rabbanis. You're a Rav in North Woodmere for how many years already?
So we started the shul in 2004. So I guess that's 17 years.
17 years. That's a long time.
And we learned from Rebbitzin Shirley.
Plakowitz, yeah.
Yeah.
Gross.
I'm mixing up my people. Yeah, we learned from Rebbitzin Youngreis's daughter.
Slavy.
She grew up in North
Woodmere. So there was a community there, right. But I think that what North Woodmere is today, I think I could say that you're a big part of
the growth.
That growth, yeah.
It's definitely different
and
than
the property tax
was. Yeah, growing up in the 5 towns, like North Woodmere was like, we didn't even think of North Woodmere. You grew up here, right? Like North Woodmere was like...
I know it existed until like 5 years ago. Like, really.
I mean, like I remember I had a bar mitzvah once when I was in like 7th grade or 8th grade in the Sephardic temple. And that was like as far as you go.
That's the draw, yeah.
Yeah,
that's like
unless you had to go to like a movie theater in Lynbrook or something and you'd pass through and you'd be like, what is this place? You know, it was like,
is that where the rabbis go to the movies? Like in Lynbrook? They can't go locally. So
I'm saying when I was in 7th grade.
Right.
So that growth, when you went there, did you envision it would turn into what it is today?
Not at all. I mean, it was a lot of siyata d'shmaya, like everything else in life, and really just like the right group of people that wanted to start a shul. I remember literally 6 months before I started my shul, I was living in Cedarhurst. I was the assistant rabbi in Shari Tefillah. And my sister bought a house in North Woodmere. And I remember my wife and I telling her, you're crazy. Like, there's no one there. There's nothing there. You can't get to Central Avenue, really. Like, what are you doing? And like a couple of months later, we got a call from this chevra that my sister was part of, asking if we'd be willing to, to move to North Woodmere and start a shul. And we had the right people to start with, people who were very dedicated, who had the same vision, and thank God it really picked up.
Wow, that's really nice. So, but you have a few caps that you wear. You're, like Nachi mentioned, you're a Rav, you're also a Rebbe, you run the Smitha program in YU.
Yeah.
Very famous YU Torah class.
YU Torah. Well, YU Torah is YU Torah is not really a job, meaning I give shiurim and
it's well known.
Yeah, so it gets put online, meaning that really happened by accident. I have a chavrusa, who I still call my chavrusa, even though we haven't learned together in a while, but it's like a big honor that he was my chavrusa, Rabbi Shalom Rosner, who
moved to Eretz Yisrael.
Yeah, he moved to Eretz Yisrael. So he was like this rising star in America, in the American rabbinate. He started, he was the first rabbi at the Island Avenue Shul, and he was a Rebbe in Yeshiva University, and he was giving a DaFiomi shir online on YU. I mean, he was giving it in the shul, but...
it was being uploaded,
yeah. It was being uploaded. And when he made Aliyah, the OU sort of took him away from YU Torah and they were willing to pay him. So YU Torah needed somebody to give a DaFiomi shir. I don't think they even knew who I was, but they knew that I was Rabbi Rosner's chavrusa. So they gave me a recorder. Usually I carry it with me. I don't have it with me. And they said, we don't know anything about you, but we have no one else willing to give the shir. So would you mind uploading it?
What year is this around?
This, when Rabbi Rosner made Aliyah, it was in Masechas Gittin around Daf Lamed.
Oh wow!
So from 2 cycles, I don't know.
That's how I remember my kids' birthdays. Yeah. Born in Kedushin.
Yeah, it was probably like 15 years ago.
Wow. Okay. So because now it's like the trend, which is great, but you were doing.
They couldn't find anyone willing to do it. Meaning, like it was like there was no one else because people were so afraid of putting shiurim online. Because what if you say something that's wrong?
That's so funny.
And now it was like people say things wrong all the time. We're human. Okay, so you get over it and you'll apologize in the next year or something.
You weren't scared to I guess, because in that mindset, a lot of people, like the internet was still developing. You weren't scared yourself of being out there?
I was a little nervous about it. Those first few shiurim, I prepared like so many hours just to make sure like I got it exactly right. The first couple I actually recorded again after I gave the shiur, just because I wasn't comfortable with it. Now it's like, who has time for that? But it's amazing. Torah on the internet has like changed it's brought together parts of Yiddishkeit that would never be brought together. Like I go to a chasna, a guy sits down next to me. He's like, guy says to me, I just got to this happened 2 weeks, about a month ago. A guy right before the 3 weeks, whenever that was. I don't know. So I don't know, whenever this is recorded.
So guy, you picked one job. I had one job.
You picked the only daf that does not exist.
Okay, yeah.
Kinyan Masechta.
Yeah.
So this guy sits next to me and he's like, I got to tell you, he says, I'm Aguda through and through. I'm a grandson of Rav Sharer. I'm a board member of Aguda. I would have no shaykhus to you, to your Rebbeim, to your Chaverim, but Torah on the internet, it's amazing. He's like, I listen to you guys all the time. Like it brings, YU Torah tells me that they have more people listening from Lakewood than they do from like Teaneck and the Five Towns. I mean,
Teaneck, we still love you. Teaneck, we love you.
It's definitely bigger, right? But that's incredible. I wouldn't have anticipated.
And also, you wear the hat of sort of like a Twitter rabbi, where you're very active on Twitter. You have almost 5,000 followers, and like. That's a huge following, and you post some really good stuff there.
Yeah, so that I'm always like a little bit torn about. You know, should a rabbi be on Twitter? My Talmidim ask that a lot because, as you mentioned, I have the great privilege of teaching Semikhah students. So these are the future rabbis in America.
So what do you think? So what do you think?
So they always say, like, is it appropriate? Like, and they'll say that they ask the mashgiach, should they be on Twitter? And the mashgiach said, no way. They're like, but Rabbi Lebowitz is on Twitter, and the mashgiach has to say, oh, when you give a DaFiomi share, you could be on there, or something like that, But I really view it as like everything else in technology in the world, like it could be used for terrible evil and it could be used for really good things. I think the Yetzer Hara on Twitter is a little bit different. The Yetzer Hara on Twitter is to just self-promote constantly, to talk about how great you are. This is what I'm doing now. This is what I've been up to. These are my accomplishments, because that's the way it's used. I mean, that's what it's meant for. And that's totally inappropriate for a Rav for a Jew, but for a Rav to be doing. It's not about you. One of my Rebbeim, Rabbi Yisrael Kamenetsky, I taught 18 years in DRS High School. He used to always tell us, we don't work for HALB, we don't work for the board, you don't work for me, you work for the Ribono Shel Olam. Always keep that clear. And if you have that, clear vision, you work for the Ribono Shel Olam, then everything else, all the decisions become so much more clear. So I think you really have to say, I'm not doing this for me. I'm not doing this because I get more followers or more likes or whatever, retweets and anything else. Work for the Ribono Shel Olam. If you could be Mekadesh Shem Shemayim through a medium where people are, then I figure might as well take advantage of that opportunity.
So how do you sort of, I guess, turn off that part that's really natural, that you put something out on social media and you see it has 10 retweets and 12 retweets and 15. Right. You're like, this is good. And you want to, how do you turn that part off?
You have to be conscious of it. You have to really work hard, because that's the entire trend. It's also a big time waster. So you have to be very limited in terms of who you follow, both in terms of what their content is and just in terms of the numbers. You can't be following. Your feed is going to just take up your whole day if you want to read what's there. So you have to be very conscious of that. I remember I visit Camp Hask just about every summer. I visit my friend Rav Judah and Rabbi Yehuda Willig, and they always give me an opportunity to say a shir to the amazing, amazing counselors at Camp Hask. It's just an amazing place. It's an amazing thing, Stam, during the summer when I'm up in Keli, so I go visit Hask and Semikhah, and you see these amazing, amazing people. But anyway, so when Rav Judah said to me, you can't have Twitter on the phone. And it was like, I know you always get to the best advice. That was one of the better pieces of advice I ever got.
You got rid of it from your phone?
Yeah, I can't have it on the phone.
So funny, Rabbi Ephraim Goldberg, one of his summer resolutions was he deleted all social media from his phone. And if he wants to post something on Facebook or on Twitter or anything, he does it from a computer. Yeah, with Rav Goldberg is also, thank God, a very good friend. His social media presence is so much more significant. He has this tremendous following, and he has an incredible skill in being able to express
Yiddishkeit in a way that sounds reasonable to everybody and resonates with people. And for him, I have to imagine that having it on his phone would just be
Crazy.
a total drain on his time.
I'm the opposite. I used to not have it on my phone. Now I do have it on my phone. Maybe I'm going backwards over here.
You may want to work on
Maybe I
that.
have to think about that.
It says in DaFiomi that you should. And while we're just name dropping, like literal all stars of Yiddishkeit in terms of Rabbanim, is there like a get together? I feel like there should be a get together of the rabbis.
You know where it is? It's in Camp Kaylee because I see on Twitter you're
Camp
posting.
Kaylee is
Every day I'm like, why am I not in Camp Kaylee? There's a gadol every day going to visit.
We had it was amazing this summer. They did something called Gedolim Day, where they brought Rav Reuven Feinstein, Rav David Cohn, and Rav Mordechai Willigan, and Rav Moshe Weinberger.
We should have gone there to do podcasts that day.
I know,
that day would have been, especially because like you bring Gedolim to a camp. You went to camp as little kids, right?
Yeah. Everyone's running around shorts and t-shirts.
Yeah,
and
what are you going to do with Gedolim in camp?
Right.
Like they got them there with a great photo op. Now what do we do with them?
Exactly.
So like I'm learning with these guys who are 19-year-old guys who are learning all day long. That's what I do in Kaylee. I say shiurim and we learn with these guys all day long. So we basically had the Gedolim all to ourselves because they gave a bracha to everybody else, and then like we had Q&A with Rav David Cohn. We had Rav Reuven Feinstein giving a Musar Shmooze. So yeah, that was. I also took the guys to different places. A lot of those pictures, I took them to Camp Aguda to see Rav Yisrael Reisman, who I'm a huge chassid of, even though I'm not a Torah Das guy, but he's you'll never be able to get him, but he is amazing.
We've been trying, not
you
as
can't
hard
even
as
get him to come speak somewhere. Rav Pam told him, and by the way, if the sentence starts with Rav Pam told him, you will never get him to veer from that.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah. Rav Pam told him, you worry about your shul, you worry about Torah V'das, but he's very accessible if you go to him.
Okay, so we'll be part of his shul. How much is membership?
I don't know if you go membership. We could just go to the
I
shul.
brought my YU Smicha guys to Torah V'das, which is
Really?
like unprecedented, from a different yeshiva just coming to Torah V'das.
Yeah, that's two different worlds.
Yeah, and it was great. He sat with us for like an hour, answering all the questions about Rabbanis, and it was
Would
great.
you say that would never happen 10 years ago?
I would say people wouldn't have thought of it. I think a lot of this has to do with Torah on the internet and breaking down of barriers. And now like half of his Talmidim listen to my Rebbe's Torah and my Talmidim all listen to his Torah. Like it feels, the Torah really brings us together when the Torah is so accessible.
So Torah online became more about Torah instead of really where and what it's coming from. It doesn't matter if it's YU, it doesn't matter if it's
exactly.
It's Haredi.
It's amazing. I mean, we talk about YU Torah stories for a while, but like I've gotten emails from Satmar Hasidim, from Reconstructionist rabbis, like the whole gamut of Yiddishkeit, once or twice from a guy, but mostly the whole gamut of Yiddishkeit. It's really remarkable. When they did a launch of the YU Torah app in YU. At the time, I was still teaching in Lander College. I wasn't in YU yet, but they invited me to the launch of the app. And I noticed in the back of the room, there was like a chassid in like real, like not like neo-chassid, nothing against neo-chassidim, but not like, like the local modern Orthodox chassidim, like a real chassid with a few chassidish children. And he told, and I went over to him afterwards, or he came over to me, I don't remember, and he said, I just had to come because we gained so much Torah. We live in Monroe, I think it was. He said, we have to listen on half speed because my kids don't really speak English so well. So we listen on half speed.
The only person in the world utilizing half speed.
I know. I was like, who's it for?
To Feiner.
Exactly. I always thought it was only for Rabbi Feiner. I didn't realize. So it was just amazing.
That's really incredible. It's okay. So under that, Torah online gambit, you mentioned it, and I mentioned Daf Aleph. My wife's gonna kill me. DaFiomi, giving the daf. You're one of the biggest players, if I could even use that term, in terms of giving the daf.
So again, the daf thing just happened by accident. That was Rabbi Rosner gives the great daf shir, and mine is a little bit shorter, so some people don't have as much time. Will hop over to me.
So what number cycle is this for you?
So we started learning the daf with Krisus. I remember, I know, but this is, this is my third cycle teaching the daf. We started learning the daf with Krisus. I remember Rabbi Rosner called me. It was like Cholamoid Sukkos, and he said, DaFiomi starts Krisos right after Sukkot. You want to learn Krisos? And I'm like, not really, but I want to learn with you. So I'll do whatever I can to learn with you. If I have to learn Krisos, I'll learn Krisos. So I started with Rabbi Razner then. And then like a couple of months later, we were up to Nida and like the Siyum HaShas was coming up. And Rabbi Razner and I were learning in the DRS Beis Medrash here in Woodmere. And Rabbi David Willig came over to us and he's like, guys, you both have small, young, growing shuls. DaFiomi is about to make a Siyum HaShas. You should both start giving DaFiomi shiurim. And we both looked at him like he came from a different planet. We're like, he's got 30 guys in the shul. I have like 12. Like, who are we going to give DaFiomi shiur to? It's going to be ridiculous. He's like, no, you got to do it. You know, strike while the iron is hot. Everyone's going to be inspired. And because of Rav David Willig, both Rabbi Razner and I started giving DaFiomi shiur with brachos daf beis that cycle.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
That's really, yeah. It's
one Rebbe's like encouragement and just pushing. How many people are doing the daf now because of you, Rabbi Razner?
The power of suggestion. It's an amazing point. Meaning, a lot of times people are afraid to say something, especially as a Rebbe. Sometimes you don't want to push, you don't want, but a suggestion. You know, they tell the story. I just heard from Rabbi Metenki from Chicago, a story about Abraham Lincoln that he attended some drasha, lahavdil, of some pastor, and they asked him afterwards, how was it? And he said he was so well prepared, he was so articulate, he knew the material so well, he's such a passionate speaker. So he said, oh, so you loved it? He said, no, it was terrible. And they said, well, why was it terrible? And he said, because he didn't tell anybody what to do. He didn't make a suggestion at the end that, you know, here's how to act. Here's what you should do with it. And like, that's huge. There's a Rav who passed away a few years ago. I used to live around the corner from me in North Woodmere, Rabbi Maurice Lamb. He was the rabbi of the largest shul on the West Coast for a while in Beverly Hills. And he retired to North Woodmere. Go figure. So I once asked him to critique my drasha, you know, in the shul. And one of the things he told me, he had a lot to say. It was a 10-minute drasha, and it was like an hour and a half of things I did wrong. But one of the things he told me was that you have to make people a little uncomfortable. You have to just like give a suggestion, tell people to do something that they're not doing. Because not everybody's going to listen, but someone's going to say, and you know what? It works. It really, really works. It's amazing. Just a suggestion.
Aside from that suggestion that you got from Rabbi Willig, has there been any other suggestions that someone gave you that empowered you or pushed you to do something?
Did you go to South Shore by any chance?
I did not.
You did not.
My nephews
you went to
there,
Derech, right? You went to Derech. So, I mean, I'll tell you one that when I was in sixth grade in South Shore, we had a Rebbe, Rabbi Krieger, and Rabbi Krieger, who I think since retired and moved to Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi Krieger used to have, whenever a boy put on tefillin, he would go around the classrooms and offer, this wouldn't happen anymore, every Rebbe a l'chaim. They would go around with like a bottle of shivas.
When I was a mitzvah, that doesn't happen anymore?
I can't imagine that they would let 12-year-olds walk around with a bottle of shivas anymore.
In Chaim Berlin, that's
I never even didn't do that?
No, in Chaim Berlin we did it, yeah.
You give like a donut and a
donut,
shot.
And a shot, yes. I remember, yes, I remember kids coming in pretending
you're telling
to be
me it doesn't
drunk.
happen anymore.
I can't imagine. Maybe it does, but I can't imagine that happens.
Maybe in Cheder.
So one of the things Rabbi Krieger used to tell every single boy was never talk in your tefillin. Don't talk sichas chulin in your tefillin. And like a sixth grader hearing that with every bar mitzvah boy that came in as they came into the classroom. So a bunch of us decided, that's it. We're not talking in our tefillin. Once I became a Rebbe, I had to do Hataras Nedarim because you have to sometimes like speak to the Talmidim even while you're wearing tefillin. But till I became a Rebbe from bar mitzvah, never spoke sichas chulin. I can tell you stories that I've suggested.
You never said a word in your tefillin from when you became bar mitzvah to become a Rebbe?
I mean, to Hashem we speak, but
and you never said.
Yeah. I'm not the only one. It's not like this is not a me thing. This is a Rabbi Krieger thing.
That's impressive.
That's really good.
To never like.
And it's not like we were the fromest kids either.
Right.
That's the power of suggestion.
It's really amazing. I want to go back to DaFiomi for a second because Nachi just started. Kudos to Nachi.
Oh,
he started. Rabbi
Where did you start?
Stefanski.
What daf?
Rabbi Stefanski. I started in.
He issued that challenge.
I started at the beginning of Symmachah. Or the end of before Symmachah.
I think
Yuma.
Okay.
The end of Yuma.
So for someone like Nachi or a lot of people who just started DaFiomi or they're thinking to start DaFiomi or I don't know, we never spoke about it, but like someone who's doing it and like they're having a hard time. It's the consistency is grueling. What advice would you give for?
Yes, I more often get the question from DaFiomi Magidei Shir, like how do they keep it entertaining and keep people interested? But I think it's an important question, even a more important question for people who are actually learning the daf. I would say it is fast-paced. And there are days where, like, I don't know what time of day you do it, but a lot of people wake up an hour earlier than they normally would. They're like tired and like, it's some kachim sugya that they don't really chop what's going on. And like, I woke up an hour early to like sit here feeling like an idiot because I don't follow anything. So I always say, like, try to find one nugget, one piece. And I think this is even more important for the Magidei Shir. Give a nugget, meaning say a little something about that Amora. Say something about, tell an inspirational story in the middle of the daf, something, some dvar halacha that is nogea l'maisa that people can incorporate, or people can, something that everybody can understand, because no one should have to wake up an hour early, come to a 45-minute, 50-minute shir and feel like they got nothing. And now they're going to be like a zombie the whole day for no reason. And I think if you have something that you get from every daf, and then you'll see with some of the, easier dafim, you'll feel a lot of inspiration, ebbs and flows of inspiration. But there's great value to consistency, obviously.
That's such a good point. Because sometimes, the daf is more consistent than people. Like it's every single day, and sometimes people are not like, they wake up.
It's great training in being consistent also. Like it has a spillover effect. Sometimes people will say, is DaFiomi really, in yeshiva, they always told us you shouldn't learn DaFiomi, that it's not real learning, it's not the way to do things. So like, I always say, show me the person who learned less because he does DaFiomi. Most often a person learns DaFiomi, it's like, now I'm a learner. Like that's what I do now, because I'm a learning person. So therefore, I'm going to do DaFiomi, not Shnai Mikra, I'll pick up Shnai Mikra also. And, like it changes everything.
I bumped into... Rabbi Aryeh Lebowitz, who we had on the podcast, who's MDY, does the daf show that I listen to, and he was asking me, "Oh, you're still doing it?" Because I was, for a long time, I'd be on Zoom at 12:15 a.m. when in Israel it's 7:15. Right. So I'd be on Zoom, and then I'm like, hey, it's not sustainable. I'm falling asleep. So I started doing it in the morning. He's like, I haven't seen you on Zoom. Are you still doing it? I said, yeah, I watched it on YouTube, and I'm a little bit behind, but And he said something during the podcast, but he said it to me then and again because someone else came over to him and said, what happens if I fall behind? And he said, it's not about the daf, it's about the yomi.
Very good.
It's about, and you said, just becoming a learner every day, waking up and learning and just, sort of checking that box. You do the daf great, but the fact that you're learning, I think that's...
Yeah. I happen to be a morning person also. Like late at night, my brain shuts down. But it's also important for a person to know when their brain is going to be the clearest, when they have the best chance of succeeding. There are people that can't do it in the morning. They can only do night. And there are some people, that work better in the morning.
And we'll be right back to this episode, but first we just had a really funny conversation.
Yes, we did.
We're like talking like what should this ad be with AMR, or Yaakov and myself got into a natural conversation about pharmacies in general, which is pretty normal here in this office.
Basically, we were talking about like, what does someone really want from a pharmacy? And I was talking to my friend who was complaining about his pharmacy, and he said the worst part is he goes in and he has to wait, and then he finally gets there.
He said he's thinking about switching pharmacy, but his wife usually handles all that. So he said, I just usually just go pick it up. I said, yeah, but you don't have to go pick it up if you switch to AMR because they deliver. He's like, huh, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Like it was
like, you'll just take out my job in the whole pharmacy like situation. Like, yeah.
When again, when anyone sees Nachi and myself, like they know, like we don't even talk about the podcast anymore. We love Meaningful People, but we're just always like, yo, AMR.
Yeah, Meaningful People's all right.
Yeah,
AMR is like,
there we go. That's where it's at. So if you want to go and switch to AMR pharmacy, if you're in New York, New Jersey, I actually was talking to someone else who's like, oh, they're New York and New Jersey? I thought it was just New Jersey. Right. I'm like, no, they're everywhere in New York, New Jersey. It's just a phone call away. Nach, what's the number?
848-222-1110, or you can head to amarfarmrx.com. Quick question.
Yeah.
Like you're davening Yom Kippur, Ne'ilah, Kol Nidre, and like random thoughts pop into your head. It's like the Yitzhar saying like,
it's so
chicken fingers, some Carlos and Gabby's, like just random thoughts. I wonder if
any worst random thought, but yeah, okay.
I know it could be worse.
Yeah,
it could be like chicken wings. But any of our listeners think of AMR during Yom Kippur davening this year?
I seriously hope not.
I hope not. Also,
oh man, but the problem. What you just did,
if they did,
you just
we're so good at what we do.
Brains for next Yom Kippur. Please don't think of just Hashem and doing tshuva.
No, but when you're saying Roifei Chayei Yisrael, you can think of AMR because they're involved in that.
I really don't want people to think that though.
Don't think about AMR during Yom Kippur.
Oh my gosh!
Don't think about it.
do think about them during the week when you have that, drug need because you went to the doctor and you're sick. It sounds weird. I know.
Because when you feel an urge for drugs,
when you feel a little
call
sick,
AMR.
Exactly. There you go. Call AMR Pharmacy. That's it. And now enjoy the rest of the episode. Do you have a wild? I know giving the daf. I mean, people who are doing the daf, it's hard, but giving the daf is probably 10 times more difficult. Do you have a story or a time when you, I don't know, had to like go well past the norm to prepare for a share?
I wish that was the norm. What happens more often is that I just don't have time to prepare, and like you say a little tefillah before the daf,
and you just do it on the fly. You have to,
and it goes online, and like you're like Ribbon Shalom, like make this happen. There are a couple of shurim where I'll actually announce at the beginning, like I apologize to everyone who woke up early and came to this year to learn. We're going to learn together, like old style, the way learning was meant to be. Like just figure it out together because I just really don't know. I haven't had a chance to look at it. I don't even know if it's a hard daf or an easy daf yet. And, I do find, though, that the adrenaline of like saying the shir and, it allows you to focus in a certain way that you get a lot of siyata d'shmaya. There are like some dapim in the Erevin and things like where I prepared for like, I still didn't get it. And then like, as you're saying the shir, it's like, that's it. And like, it just becomes clear as you're saying the shir.
I would really love to talk to you about the Semikhah program and what it's like. I think you're the first person that we had on that's running a Semikhah program.
Yeah, this is like a tremendous zechus that I have that I get to. Well, one of the things, I'll tell you this, we were talking before about like a lawyer or a rabbi and like people come to, ask for this kind of career advice all the time. One of the things that's underrated is who you get to hang out with. Like people talk about like what I do all day and the impact you could have and what you could do for Klal Yisrael, which is great and it's very important. But like I get to hang out all day with like Gedolei Torah, Rosh Yeshiva, in the neighborhood, like on, Vad calls and Geras and all the other things that we do with like amazing Talmidei Chachamim. Like my friends in the neighborhood are like you talk about name dropping, like Rabbi Feiner and Rabbi Trump and Rabbi Forst. And like, it's like just an amazing people that you get. And then like the Talmidim are like the future rabbis of America and Israel. I mean, they're amazing. It's such a special.
It's a big responsibility though, having a Smicha program, because you're literally responsible for the future of.
It's a responsibility in a couple of levels. First of all, you also have to identify people who think they're cut out for it.
I was going to ask you that. Who really like go to school, like become an accountant or something.
Exactly.
Like, is that a big part of what you need to do?
It's not a big part, but it's definitely a part. Meaning,
what's that conversation like?
It depends on the person. You have to do it.
Torah's not for you. No, I'm kidding.
Torah's for everybody.
Right. Besides for you.
Maybe being a marbit Torah. Maybe I shouldn't even say that. Being a rabbi is not for you. Usually, it's a midos issue. It's not a
it's not like a teaching
issue.
Or intelligence.
Yeah, meaning the most important thing is that. When people are looking for Rabbanim, they're always looking for the wrong things. It's a lot like Shidduchim sometimes that, they're looking for, is he a great speaker? Great speaker is important because, you're going to have to listen to the guy a lot, but midos are so much more important, that the person be an anav and that he be giving and, and people don't really know how to test that, when they're looking at Rabbanim, but we have to catch that.
So how do you test that? How do you catch that? Is it like a test?
We try to really get to know the guys well enough, and like, and we
There's no shortcut. You have to actually get to know people.
Exactly. Yes.
So you still have that value. You still have that that skill that most of us have lost over the years, which is getting to know people.
It's something it's a critical part of the job. Yeah. And thank God we have a good team. It's not, it's nowhere near just
we can help you out. We can have like a staged podcast. Like, we want to have you on for a podcast. And like, me? Yeah, you're doing something great, and just have them on here for an hour.
And anyone who jumps too quickly to say, yes, you do need to interview me. You have to hear what I have to say.
Yeah. By the way, with you hit the right, like whenever we reach out to someone to come on the show, usually they say, no, I'm not good. I'm not meaningful. Why do you want to have me? Okay, fine. And you totally hit every check mark.
With me, it's totally different because like the guys that you have on have like these amazing, I don't have a story.
No, you don't have a
I'm
story.
Just a rabbi.
But,
but there are like 50 of us in the 5 towns. Like,
No, but you have
so many people can relate to the life that you're living.
But also the impact that you make, whether it's the daf or being a Rav in your shul or being a Rebbe or running the Smitha program.
Sometimes it's difficult for people to, like there are great stories, right? So amazing Rabbanim, or even let's like remove it from that, just because I don't want to talk details about people, but like, there was a study or a stat that, Stephen Curry's jersey sales surpassed LeBron James a few years ago, and they were trying to figure out why. And I think the conclusion they came to is that LeBron James is like 6'9". He's a
basketball cyborg.
He's like
built for this.
straight out of Space Jam. Like he has this body like no one, you can't achieve that. And Stephen Curry is this 6'3" lanky kid who people are watching are like, I can do that. I can chuck a shot from half court. It goes in. I can't do a windmill dunk like LeBron. So people were able to relate to him more,
Rabbi
which is why
is this material for like a like a speech in the shul? Like, are you like, I don't know. I like it. I like it.
I think I could
but
use
they're
that.
able to relate.
That is where my head was going.
Yeah, okay.
So they're able to
That's
relate to
usable.
him more. So it's sort of like, it's hard sometimes to relate to the big Gedolim stories.
I don't think no offense, I don't think you're very relatable. The amount, like you're making like, yeah, it's not such a big deal, but like, no, there's certain people that they just give DaFiomi, but that you're running a Semikhah program, you're, I don't want to say you have the most shirim online, but you're definitely top 5 people in the world with the most shirim online.
There's something about the online. So quantity is not the same as quality, first of all.
For sure.
Second of all, I and my chaverim had the tremendous zechus of learning from one of the Gedolei Torah of our generation, Rav Hershel Schachter, Shlita. And one of his unique kochos is the ability to say over very high-level Torah with incredible clarity. So like we all sort of received that. And not everyone could follow him because he's so fast, and it is kind of high level stuff. But like all our whole chevra, the guys that were in shir with me, Rav Ephraim Goldberg and Rav Daniel Stein, and like that whole Rav Tanchum Cohn and Rav Shai Shechter, and like that whole group. Like all we're doing is, I don't mean to minimize what they're doing, but all we're doing as far as sharing Torah is we're taking our Rebbe's Torah and we're just slowing it down a little bit. With trying to achieve that same clarity, and that's what resonates with people. The fact that people feel like they can understand something, that they can get the Torah, and it's all his zechus. It's our Rebbe's zechus.
What's your favorite part about being a Rav or being a Rabbanis?
The best part about being a Rabbanis is you really get to see people at their best. A lot of times people think, in Rabbanis it's so terrible. You see people at their worst. You really see people at their best. It's just 2 weeks ago, there's a person who died very suddenly in our neighborhood. And they were not members of my shul. Their shul doesn't have a Rav yet. And the almana, so people in the neighborhood have been cooking for the almana to help her out. 20 minutes before late Shabbos, I tweeted this, I don't know if you saw this, but 20 minutes before late Shabbos, she texts me, whoever was supposed to make Shabbos for me just didn't come through. They forgot about it. I have 10 people here, my whole in-laws family. I got nothing. So we put it out like on sisterhood chats. 15 minutes later, 5 minutes before late Shabbos, tell them to stop bringing stuff.
Wow.
Like you just see people at their best. I have I could tell you before every Yantif, I come into shul. Now the shul is locked at night. I don't know who does this, how they even get into the building. I find on my
security issue.
Yeah, it's a security. I should check the cameras. But I find on my stender an unmarked, an envelope that just says Rabbi Lebowitz on it. I open it up and it's typed. It's not even handwritten. It's like a serial killer note. It's typed. Please distribute to people who can use this, and it's like a bunch of gourmet gift cards. Wow. Totally anonymous, and it's reliable before every yantif.
You still don't know who it is.
I have no idea who it is. There's another guy that
amazing. He's probably listening.
Yeah, maybe. There's another guy that calls me before every yantif and says, I'm making a nice yantif for my family. I want to make a nice yantif for another family. clothing, shoes, food, everything they need, soup to nuts. Just tell me what it costs. And he sends them to like local clothing stores where they just say Rabbi Lebowitz. They don't even know it's this guy. They don't know who it is. No one knows besides for me. He won't let me talk about it. At one of his Simikhahs, I wanted to say something. He said, "Don't you dare! Don't say a word." And they go into like as if I'm the big Baal Tzedakah. They go into these stores. They say Rabbi Lebowitz, and then that's it. They have the credit card on file, and they go on the shopping.
I want to use that trick. Yeah, I'm gonna go to Gourmet Glatt and be like Rabbi Lebowitz.
I think a lot of people are about to start walking into the places.
It's at a particular time when the store knows to expect it.
If you walk into Gourmet tomorrow, you can't say Rabbi Lebowitz unless my work.
Well, I'll tell you the power of suggestion we mentioned before. I mentioned that story during a Shabbos Shuvah drasha, and that night, let's say Shabbos Shuvah, I got like 3, 4, 5 phone calls from people saying, "That's a great idea. I want to do that also."
Really?
That's so awesome.
That's really beautiful. Okay, so I guess
Jews are great. Jews are great.
At the flip side, I don't want to like take you down, but what would you say is like the most, I don't know, the most difficult or disappointing part about being a Rav from your viewpoint?
Yeah, I would say it's, some of the most rewarding parts about being a Rav are the things like that you don't get paid for, that aren't included in like your responsibilities, and you do it like, when you serve on a Geirus Beis Din, you don't get paid for that. No one in your shul cares if you do it or don't do it, but it's a service to Klal Yisrael. So one of those things is like Vada Kashrus, to ensure the kashrus of the community is the standard that it should be. You don't get paid for that. The shul couldn't care less whether you did it or not. They're not interested in that. But it's something that should be the Rav's responsibility to make sure that those things are okay. And like sometimes, like for things like that, particularly with the Vadakashas, the agmas nefesh that you get and the attacks that you get, it's a mafia and politics. It's like, this is the least political thing we do. There's no money involved. There's nothing. It's like, there's I can't stand politics. That's what's so beautiful about this. It's like, it's a group of Rabbanim from across the spectrum of the 5 towns, which is a more significant spectrum than most communities, that we sit in a room and just like, what's best for the community? And that's how the decisions are made. And like tzaddikim, Rabbi Forrest, Rabbi Feiner, Rabbi Yaakov Trump, Rabbi Axel, like I'm forgetting some people, Rabbi Whitkin, like amazing, wonderful people. And like, that's hard. It's hard to develop a thick enough skin to like not be bothered by all of the attacks that come as a result of just like, you're giving like so many hours of your time just to try to do good for Klal Yisrael.
I love the quote you said, and we don't have to get too detailed. We could talk about it as little or as much as you want. That you said that in terms of just like listen to Rabbanis about, like let's say the VAD, which is incredible. It was side point. I grew up in Brooklyn, and Brooklyn's a great place, but it was just it's a great place. Hey, Nachi, we don't want to lose our Brooklyn people. But from a kasha standpoint, it was very confusing. I remember like there was a specific Dunkin' Donuts. Like every day had a different Rav giving us comment. Like I didn't know who it was, and it got very confusing. So when I came to
Israel.
Oh my God, Israel is it's so complicated. But Baruch Hashem, when I came to the 5 towns, it was like, oh wow, this is great. But I heard you say, quote, when something happened, and you said something along the lines of, and maybe if you want to say it, that you could go to your Rav people go to the Rav to make a wedding, to marry off their kids, and
right. I mean, people trust the Rabbanim. They hire the Rabbanim. They go to the Rabbanim for end-of-life situations. They trust them with mamish life and death issues. But like, because you enjoy the chicken at a particular place, like, I mean, that's where you draw the line. That's where you're not going to trust the Rav anymore. And like, one of the issues is that people don't realize what you're saving them from. Meaning they don't, because they've never experienced it the other way. Meaning every time someone goes to Israel, I get that call. Where can I eat? Where can I eat? This person has taken me out, but it's this kind of restaurant. I'm not going to mention any hashgachas, but it's it's under this. Can I eat there? Can I not? Milchiks, fleishigs, speaking to the mashkiach. There's so much. I mean, that's where politics comes in, when there's all that competition. When you just have local Rabbanim who are working for free, trying to figure it out, what's best for the community, that's when there's no politics. That's like, that's
on the note of, I guess, the Rabbanim working together. COVID was a crazy time. And I think I have some understanding, or I know that the Rabbanim, especially here in the 5 towns, were just around the clock trying to work for the community and try to figure things out when it came to shuls and this and that. What was, I guess that experience as a Rav during COVID through and through?
It was, that was one of the more, it was challenging because for so many reasons, but like I could tell you personally, in my little shul, and again, I have a little, I mean, now it's very tall, but like I have this little shul in North Woodmere, 120 families that are members. Not only did I lose a good friend to COVID very early on, 43-year-old guy, Almani Yisomim, like not only so we were mourning, mamish mourning. 4 other members of the shul lost a parent, and it's all like we're a young shul. The parents weren't in their 90s, they were in their 70s, they were in their 60s. 4 other members. So we were all like in mourning. Kol yom was kilasa meruba mechaveru. You were afraid to go on Yeshiva World News to see which Admor or Gadol Ador or Rosh Yeshiva or whatever passed away that day. And at the same time, you had to like keep a level head and try to help people and guide people. That was, and I have to say for myself, the Achdus point was very, very challenging, because when you feel that, when you're going through that and you're seeing people dropping like flies, and you feel that someone is taking things too lightly, so like you say, this is pikuach nefesh. How can I can't just let that slide. But the hit to the Achdus, that taking too strong a stand or saying things in too sharp a way or being too public about your disagreements, that's something, it's going to take a long, long time to recover from that hit to the Achdus. And I know I made significant mistakes on that level. Like there are a lot of things I could have said differently and better. That was hard.
I was following you. I was thinking that you were saying a lot of very
no, a lot of us came together. A lot of us did come together, and in a lot of ways, we created like this chevra that we never had before, where there are Rabbanim even beyond just the 5 towns out on the island that like we'd all get together and we'd talk things over, and like throughout the country, even like we'd go on these calls with Rabbi Moshe Hauer, let's say from the OU, who, by the way, I don't know if you saw, Shirley Besser wrote a piece on.
It was a cover issue.
I emailed Shirley Besser. I'm like, amazing. You described him perfectly. The most level-headed person, like when the world is burning around him, like clear vision, level-headed person. He was amazing. So and being on calls with Gedolei Torah, with again Rav Hershel Schachter, Rav Mordechai Willig, Rav David Cohen, and just like getting this hadracha, there was a lot of good that came out of that. But there was also,
it's kind of like it's double-sided, because not a lot of communities will have all the Rabbanim in a community get on a call and discuss issues and discuss decision making. The 5 towns, I guess, did have that, especially throughout COVID. So like, what would someone rather? A community where the Rabbanim aren't getting together at all and they're just million different
if it's
things,
Ishkar Yasher Be'inav, it's not as good. It's so much better when there's a unified voice.
But that also comes with its own
it
challenges.
could have been more unified, and
right.
Part of that's on us. We could have made sure that it was more unified.
In your defense, also, it's like everyone who could have prepared for the COVID situation.
There's no preparing for it. I mean, even when it was here, we didn't.
I think there was just like, if you could speak to it a little bit, just there were so many decisions that had to be made. Just so like, that's just, people think, the occupation of a doctor or a lawyer, those are really high stress, high pressure. But how about when a Rav is going to a Pesach and they're not sure if this Kehillah member is going to make it, and when do they bury if he passes away? There's so many.
The shilas were unbelievable. I mean, that was another great suchus that I had together with, you spoke about like groups of Rabbanim getting together. So we have a group that with Rabbi Shai Schechter and Rabbi Isaac Rice and Rabbi Mati Neuberger, and there's a group of like Talmidim of Mori Rabbi Rav Schechter Shlita, and like Rabbi Daniel Feldman or Rabbi Danny Stein, like a lot of us, we'd get on a call with him, and we'd present the shaila, he would write up a tshuva, we would type up the tshuva, we'd chazer it over with him, we would then write an English summary of the tshuva, not a translation, and he would go through it with us, like all this being done, and like that was just to see the process and how a gadol handles these things. And I don't know if you know my Rebbe at all, but he's like a very emotional person, but like it's amazing. Like you tell him the story behind the shaila, and he's crying his eyes out, and then like it comes time to paskin the shaila, and it's like that stops, clear vision, again, just like trying to, and just like pulling these marmakomos that like, there are halachos and shulchan aruch you skip. You're like, oh, that's never going to happen. Like, when are you going to miss 12 weeks of laning? Like, that's never going to happen. Like, where are you going to be that's ever going to, and like just pulling all these marmakomos and saying, yeah, it's a beferish halacha and shulchan aruch. There's nothing new here. And just seeing that guidance. But, Baruch Hashem, Klal Yisrael is are not Yisomim. We have Gedolei Torah to look to.
It's really amazing. Something you mentioned was that you're involved with the Geiris Bezdin.
Yeah, that's one of the great sources of nachas. You get to see people. First of all, you don't get paid. You get paid in stories. You meet like the most inspiring people.
Well, you're about to pay it off right now.
I'll tell you one. A couple of weeks ago, this is just the one that's freshest in my mind. A couple of weeks ago, we had a young lady. By the way, I don't know why. Many more women than men.
Really?
Yeah.
I never would think that.
Many more women.
I don't
than
know
men.
why.
I think women are more contemplative. They think about life.
Definitely more spiritual.
More spiritually inclined. This girl grew up in a Christian family. So she's 18 years old.
That's young.
That's young. Normally, an 18-year-old comes to a Geiris Beis and you say, you know what? Come back in a few.
Right.
It's spring break in a few weeks.
Yeah,
Right.
You're a little young to make this decision. It's like when the people at Renewal tell me, like an 18-year-old comes says, "I want to donate a kidney." Maybe wait till you're 35. Like you probably shouldn't be making that decision when you're 18.
Shout out to Avi Zimmerman. Donated
Oh
a
my
kidney.
gosh. Do you know him? Do you know him?
No, but he just tweeted it.
Yeah.
He just tweeted it.
We'll get to renewal.
Avi, you're a hero.
We'll get to renewal soon.
So this girl, 18 years old, and I'm like, why are we doing this? Why are we talking to her? So she's already been Shomer Shabbos for 3 years. She cut off all ties with her family because she was a Christian girl in a very fundamentalist Christian
Shomer
home.
Shabbos.
Yeah.
Wait, that's
except for one thing.
We
Yeah.
have to. Okay. One thing.
You always like light a match.
Right.
Something
Okay.
like that. But she was 12 years old and it wasn't resonating with her. Like the whole, and she Googled, I mean, this is crazy. She Googled the words strive for truth because she wanted the truth. And the words that Hashem put in her head at that moment were strive for truth. And there's a book called Strive for Truth. Rav Dessler's Michtav Meliyahu in English is called Strive for Truth. She read the entire, she ordered it on Amazon or whatever. She read the entire Michtav Meliyahu.
Did you ever learn Michtav Meliyahu?
It's like
I
amazing.
probably-
This 18-year-old Christian girl.
She was 12 at the time.
It makes me want to write a book called like Christianity is wrong. And then Google.
Yeah,
Yaakov
what could go
Linger wrote
wrong
a
with
book.
titling a book like that,
I'll
right?
probably get it.
You won't be subject to any hate.
There go all our Christian listeners. Thank you.
That's it. So she decided she found the truth, and like she mamish gave up everything. She has nothing. And as we were talking to her, I mean, she knew everything, and she was so tsanua, and she's been Shomer Shabbos for a long time. Again, kashrus and everything, very very frum, like what yeshivish frum, like really yeshivish frum, and like we asked her at one point. She's living with a family in wherever. I don't want to give too many details. She's living with a family somewhere as like a live-in babysitter because she has nowhere to live and like she has no money. She has nothing. And we asked her, the people that are Makar of you are in a different town. Did you go there on Tisha B'Av, to hear say the keynotes? And she's like, I wanted to, but I didn't have money for the bus fare or the train fare to get there. And we're like, money for the train? It's like $7. And she's going to seminary this coming year in Israel. So we're like, how are you paying for that? So she said, well, the seminary is being very kind to me. It's $800. They knocked down the price from $1,500 a month to $800 a month. I figured I could do 20 hours of babysitting a week after classes. That will pay for $400 a month. And I'm going to go into debt on the other $400 and I'm going to pay it off over time. And I'm like, we're sitting there in the Young Israel Art Cedars. I'm looking at Rabbi Yaakov Trump, myself, Rabbi Tzvi Ram, who's the head of our Beis Din, and the sponsoring rabbi, who's a rabbi of a very large shul in Great Neck. I'm like, what does a girl need to go to seminary? She needs like $9,000 for the plane ticket and the seminary. I think we could take care of this, right? Like this is
And
ridiculous.
here are a couple gourmet law gift cards.
Right? I mean, like
Just tell Rabbi Lebowitz.
So after she left, I said to Rabbi Trump, I'm like, we have to do something about this, right? He's like, I'm thinking the same thing. So, between Rabbi Trump and her sponsoring rabbi and myself, like it took us like 2 minutes. Like I told the story on a share online and all of a sudden like,
Wow,
we got
Serious?
this.
That's
So,
amazing. I'm thinking a couple things. Hey, seminary is expensive.
Rosie, Mr. Shah.
I know. Oh my goodness.
seminary is a lot more expensive than that for people like me and you, by the way.
Right, oh
That's-
It's true, but that's amazing. That's really incredible.
What other things are you thinking? You said you're thinking a couple things.
I don't know. I was thinking something else, but I completely forgot once the money came into the picture. But how
We
expensive.
had
That's
one
really-
young lady who was told that growing up, the only thing she knew about Jews was that her parents were Muslims from Saudi Arabia originally. And her parents told her when they sent her to public high school, you could be friends with anybody, but not with a Jew. And, teenagers being what teenagers are, if your parents tell you can't do it, that's exactly what you
Right.
want to do. So she started hanging out with all the Jewish kids.
They should work for Aish.
She became Jewish,
Yeah,
and her parents.
totally disowned her.
Wow.
think
Most of
when-
the time they do have a good relationship with the parent. Most of the time it doesn't work that way. Thank God. And that's something you want to make sure that the person is a stable person and then they're not like just going to decide,
But how do you explain? Like, I guess as a Rav, how do you explain like an 18-year-old girl wanting to become Jewish? Like,
this was like an Avram Avinu story. She
right,
discovered
that's
Hashem.
That's so.
And like you think about yourself, like if I wasn't born into this wonderful family, sent to the best yeshivas, like what would I be doing? And like I was a good boy my whole life. I would do exactly what I was told to do.
Right.
Like I wouldn't have been. I'm not a questioner, and it's so inspiring.
Super
That's why you'll see
inspiring,
a lot of
yeah.
times it's a personality thing. You interviewed Nissim Black,
Yeah.
and what did he say? He said like the hardest thing for him is Seder. Right? Why is Seder the hardest thing? Because it's a personality thing. He's thinking, he's exploring, that's
Is
the
that a
kind of-
common denominator you see for a lot of Gerim?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. I think people, they're just, a lot of them just feel empty. A lot of people, they just feel like there are questions that aren't being answered. They feel like there's a piece missing. And at some point that piece gets filled in.
Do you find that Gerim in general, they live a super like meaningful life? Like I'm very happy I was born a Jew. Like I want to start with that. But like you take someone who chose Yiddishkeit,
Yeah.
who saw other things and explored and said, this is what I want and this is real. Is their life from there like blissful? Like this is just they found gold?
Begadol, obviously everybody is different, but broad strokes, they tend to not worry about the small stresses that we worry about as much because they found the most important answer to the most important question in life, and everything else is the small stuff. So don't sweat the small stuff. I already found the answer to the biggest question I could ever have in life. Rabbi Yechiel Weberman, I don't know if you know him, but he's a Rebbe in DRS, used to bring a friend of his who's a ger to talk to his Talmidim, his 11th or 12th grade Talmidim. And one year, he opened the floor to questions and a kid raised his hand and said, like, why do you want all of these requirements and response? Why would you take this upon yourself? All these requirements. He's like, the ger said, you view them as requirements. I view them as opportunities. I mean, every chance, every mitzvah is an opportunity to come close to Hashem. Like sometimes you need someone who came from somewhere else, from a different place, to sort of have that clarity to see that.
I always think of Avram Avinu. Like I think, and you could probably because you're the Rav here in the room, but like we all should have that mindset. Like even if you're born into something that is MS, but you have to, I would say, challenge it to the point of don't go to like a Buddhist monk mountain,
Right.
but you have to say like, wait, is this actually what I'm supposed to be doing? Like why? And
But coulda-
because if you don't know, you'll just go with the flow.
But
and
could a from birth Jew living ordinary life in Flatbush, Five Towns, Teaneck, wherever it may be, could they
why is it
choose?
Teaneck with that tone? Okay, yeah, go on.
I love Teaneck. Teaneck people don't love me.
My son just got engaged to a girl from Teaneck, so
Mazel
we're
tov.
very happy
Mazel
about
tov.
Teaneck.
Yes, yes,
I love
very-
Teaneck.
They've provided us with a wonderful daughter.
Oh, amazing.
It's really nice.
But like, could a from birth Jew choose Yiddishkeit? Like you mentioned that they make this is the biggest decision they make in their life. Well, what's the biggest decision that we get to make in our lives?
Yeah, you know who should ask?
Well, I mean, we have Bechira Chavshis, right?
know we
And
have
it is
Bechira,
a
but like-
higher madrega to have figured it out. But how many of us would actually, be introspective enough to figure it out?
So what could we be introspective about?
So our Nekudas HaBechira is a little bit different, meaning that's a Rav Dessler term from Strive for Truth, ironically. But the Nekudas HaBechira,
Should probably read that.
like where our point of, like, we don't have the Yetzer Hara to go into a McDonald's. We don't have, like, where our Bechira is, where we have to make our decisions, is a little bit of a different place. But wherever our battle is, that's where we're that's our battlefield. That's where we're supposed to fight. That's what the Ribono Shalom wants from us. And we have a lot of times, just one more thing about Geirus. I don't know, you don't want to make this about Geirus. I'm not like the Geirus
very
rabbi.
It's really interesting.
Well, that's actually the title we were going to go for. Geirus Rabbi.
I just happened to be local and they needed a third
Converts
guy.
Gentiles.
But one of the things that you find a lot is a Jewish guy who grew up gave it up at some point, to the point that he's dating a non-Jew, and he tells her at some point, look, unless you convert, my parents would never, like, this is going to be bad. Like, it's already a bad family situation. It's going to be a lot worse. And she starts, thinking about conversion, and they always try, conservative first, and the parents saying, it's not going to work. And like these, and a lot of times you'll have these young women who like start looking at Yiddishkeit and they're like, whoa, you gave this up? This is amazing. And they become like super frum and they bring the guy back. We just had a case like that also about a month ago. The guy comes from a yeshivish family, a great family, an amazing family. You know the family, probably. And like, let's say they have 8 children, 7 of 8 of them were like right on track. And this one was a little more, a little different. And like he found this girl and she brought him back and he's davening 3 times a day, he's putting on tefillin.
I think, I'm just pivoting to the renewal conversation, I think it is very hashkacha pratis that this Avi fellow, who's I think a big listener, donated a kidney, and I know you don't particularly want to talk about it too much because you say a lot of people donate kidneys, but you yourself donated a kidney.
Yeah. A lot of people, thank God.
I didn't know that.
That I donated.
I did. Yeah,
I sent you a voice note.
I didn't listen to it.
Oh my Nachi! I literally did all the research. I gave it to you. I'm gonna text with the voice notes. Listen to this before the interview.
Go Nachi.
So it's part of what I was talking about being in Rabbanis before is like who your friends are, who you get to hang out with. Like it's an amazing chevra to be part of. Like you have all these people. When I had someone text me about a year ago. My father's in the hospital suffering from kidney failure. I get on the renewal chat, and I say, guys, this is the army. Let's go. Let's storm Shemayim. We have the zechus of the kidneys, it's amazing. And you have 50 kidney donors davening for
the kidney crew.
It's so crazy that I didn't know that you donated a kidney. I was about to say like about this guy, Avi. I thought it was super like, I was about to say, how can someone donate a kidney? You're sitting right here. Like,
but it becomes like meaning the more people that did it, it becomes less. I remember the first time I saw like a sign that said, this guy in need of a kidney. It happens to be someone I knew. And I was like, what are they even like putting a sign? Who's going to do that? Like, who's going to, like, you give blood, okay. You give bone marrow, like a kidney? Who's going to give a kidney? Like it was off the wall. But then my friend, Rabbi Larry Rothwax gave a kidney, and a guy in my shul, Ethan Baraf gave a kidney, and like all these, and I have this whole chevra of people that and they're fine and they're healthy and they're good, and like you say, yeah, it's a natural thing to do. Like if you work, especially if you're a teacher, so you could take some time off. You could have a couple of weeks off in the summer or whatever, like or intercession or whatever.
What do you do this summer, Rabbi Lebowitz? I just gave one of my organs away. No biggie.
And I didn't miss the daf because I still was.
That's amazing. That's really amazing.
So the daf was actually I did miss a few daf.
Oh really? I think there's exceptions.
I mean, I learned them, but I didn't teach them. But also,
does that stick with you? Like, is it like a daily like thing? Like
you don't think about it. You don't think about it till you get a call from someone who's thinking about it. I'm telling you, they're all over the place. Kidney donors are it's amazing. Renewal. You once tweeted something like, "Give us suggestions of who we should interview," and I told you Mendy Reiner. He's the guy that started Renewal. Which, by the way, the reason I suggested that is not just because I'm a big fan of Renewal and kidney donation, everything like that. The best stories are the people where life handed them a lemon and they made lemonade for everybody else. Like you had the people from that couple, Bonei Olam.
Yeah.
Right. Life gave them the worst, or let's say, the people that started, what is it with the Tay-Sachs? Dar Yesharim, right? Life handed them the worst situation.
Yeah.
And they went and they made life better for everybody else. And then Mendy Reiner has, that kind of situation.
We get. I mean, we have to get to everyone. There's so many people, but he is suggested often.
It's incredible. I think I once heard a stat. I don't want to botch it, so I'm not going to say what I think it was, but I'm going to say what I think it was actually. That the amount of from Jews donating kidneys
it's
is
amazing.
So much. Like,
I'll tell you the number. It's crazy.
But I think I heard that a hospital stopped allowing it because they thought it was they thought it was like
harvesting.
They thought it was like like cartel stuff.
I don't know about that.
They thought they were selling.
I'll tell you this: my surgeon, his name is Dr. Watson. He's an African American fellow, and he every Tuesday and Friday he's coming in. He's doing kidney transplants for like a 25-year-old chassid from Williamsburg giving to a 67-year-old conservative Jew from Fairlawn or whatever. And he's like, this is amazing. The Jewish community is, that's really, renewal has like the whole gamut of the Jewish community. Sfardim and Ashkenazim and Hasidim. It was started by Hasidim, Hasidim and Yeshivish and modern Orthodox. It's like, it's everybody. And he said, I got to start this in the African-American community. It didn't take as well, because Klal Yisrael is Klal Yisrael,
yeah.
But the number, I'll just tell you, the if I recall correctly, it may have changed over time. There's something called altruistic kidney donation, which is very rare. Meaning, kidney donation normally happens if someone has a relative who needs a kidney. Like you see your father going through something, and so you're a match, so you want to save his life. That's where it's most common. And even then, in a lot of places, the parent will say, I'm not taking from my child, let my child have all of his organs. I'd rather die than take from my child. A lot of times the child is like, I'm not giving you a kidney. Why did you spank me when I was a kid or whatever? Whatever. But in altruistic kidney donation is almost like unheard of in America at large. Now, the percentage of Americans who are Orthodox Jews, who are Shomrei Torah mitzvos, of the American population is what? Like 0.02%. I don't know what the number is, but it's a very, minuscule segment of the American population. The percentage of altruistic kidney donors that are Orthodox Jews is about 20%. 20% of the altruistic kidney donors in America are Orthodox Jews.
That is unbelievable.
That's really wild.
That is huge. That's a huge percentage.
And the idea is, I think, that Mikamcha Yisrael is the sense that we're all mishpacha. Meaning it's something that you would do for a family member. It's just, and we also would only do it for a family member, but we just have a much bigger family. We're all mishpacha.
That's really beautiful. Okay, so we have a few questions that we ask at the end, and you're one of the guests.
There are baseline vitals
that you, I think, could anticipate it. So the first question I'm going to ask you is there a mitzvah that you particularly gravitate towards today more than others?
Yeah, there's a mitzvah that every year, I said it every year, even before I heard your podcast and before I ever heard the questions, I say it every single year. Sleeping in the sukkah on the first night of Sukkot is like...
It's the first. We never had that one.
You never had that one?
Rabbi Krohn said sitting in the sukkah.
Yeah.
He didn't say sleeping in the
when
sukkah.
It's empty, it's quiet, the fresh air, tzilusa dimnusa, you're with the Shekhinah, your whole body is surrounded by the Shekhinah. I think Chassam Sofer or someone else, it's like other than Yeshiva Eretz Yisrael, which sadly is a mitzvah I don't get to fulfill. I'm going to cry by saying that, but I don't get to fulfill that mitzvah. So that's the closest I come to Yeshiva Eretz Yisrael, I guess, is sleeping in the sukkah. That first night, and I say the first night because usually by the second night I'm sick from sleeping in the sukkah the first night.
You're like putting Benadryl from the mosquito bites. Right. On the flip side of that, what's the mitzvah you connect with the least? We never asked that one. I'm kidding. We're not going to ask that.
I was like, oh no.
We did a favorite on Vera from
a So, if you really want an answer.
Before you mentioned the best advice, do you have the worst advice you were ever given?
Yeah, the worst advice I was ever given, it's actually interesting because it was given by someone who loves me and who I would give that same advice to my Talmidim. It was a Rebbe of mine. I would give the same exact advice to my Talmidim, but I'm so grateful every single day that I didn't listen to that advice. And it was more than advice. It was put very strongly from someone who loves me, and I know it came 100% from a place of love. I met my wife when I was 16 years old. That is way too early to meet your wife, especially if you want to be a Ben Torah and you want to become a Talmid Chacham and you want to strive for things. And I mean, my Rebbe, Rabbi Kamenetsky, Rabbi Yisrael Kamenetsky, was my Rebbe in 10th grade in MTA, in high school, used to try to encourage me very strongly. And his wife was my wife's teacher, and we're still very, very close with them. And like, they're our role models and our mentors in so many different ways. Really, really tried to get us to stop talking to each other, And like, we did, like when I went to Israel, like we took a break for, when I went to yeshiva, like no talking, there was no texting back then. There was no emails, nothing. Like it was, and my life, I couldn't, but if I would have listened to that advice, I mean, like.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, I mean, there's not, one of my Rebbe once told me, when one of my chaverim, someone who I, sort of came up through the system with, got involved in something he shouldn't have gotten involved in. One of my Rebbe, I'm not going to say which Rebbe, I'm not going to say which chaver, certainly, said, Aryeh, you know what the difference between you and him is? You married the right person. I was like, yep. That's exactly right.
Yeah, because I would say most people listening, I don't want like kids who are like 16. They're like, well, if Rabbi Lebowitz did it.
No, they're right. Exactly. That's why I preface by saying I would give the same exact advice.
Right.
And I have given the same exact advice to my Talmidim. So it was the smartest advice at the time. But thank God I didn't listen to it.
Right.
That's so interesting.
Nachi has a question that he's been burning to ask you.
If you could sit down with one person in history that's no longer alive, spend an hour with them or so, who would it be?
Yeah, so this is one I thought about a lot also, because you added no longer alive at some point, right? It wasn't always no longer alive.
Yeah.
And
I think it's just like sort of like we're poking fun, like, haha, you can't meet with him anymore because he's not alive.
No,
like,
not at all.
I don't know. Like, because if he's alive, then go meet with him.
We can ask you both of them. Not alive.
It's okay. I'll handle. One of the reasons I love your podcast is because I get to listen to you talk to people that I'd be afraid to speak to. Meaning, I'm
crazy enough to sit down and speak to them.
Meaning, I'm a very shy person by nature. Not to ever compare myself, but it reminds me of a quote. Rebbetzin, Dr. Lichtenstein, Rav Soloveitchik's daughter, said about her father that he was a shy person and he would never like share about himself unless there were 5,000 people listening to a shiur. Like that's he sounded like he was so, but like he was just like by nature.
Yeah, I wouldn't have a classmate you shy.
Oh my gosh, when we like go to a Simcha, like I just want to like
really.
Yeah, I just want to like go to a corner somewhere, and like my wife is like, "Come, let's talk to everybody." And I'm like, it's just not. I love people. I just don't love like the whole socializing and talking and schmoozing and like, but like specifically when talking to big people, I freeze. Like I'm still afraid of my Rebbe. My Rebbe is like, he treats me like a son. Like he's taken me in and allowed me to, come to his apartment every week to ask him all my shilas and to talk and learning. And like, and I'm still terrified before I step over that, step into that door. Like I'm terrified of people. Like I
should have been there when we sat down the Reuven Feinstein.
Yeah, so when Reuven came to Kaylee this summer, so like, and I took my guys to Rav Reuven from Kaylee a couple of summers ago. Also, like they're like, okay, you're the Rebbe, you have to talk to him. I'm afraid. He's mishpacha a little bit. My brother married his grandniece.
Oh wow, nice.
So we're in the family. But so I have a picture from when like I'm 18 years old and my brother got married, and I went over to Rav Reuven and I said I need a picture with you, and he was, he's like such a Hamish guy, he's so easy to talk to.
Guy, yeah.
But so like when I think about like who I would,
nicest gadol.
Yeah.
Nice gadol.
He's also the nicest guy though. He's not just the nicest gadol, he's the nicest guy.
So like I always think like
I want you to tweet out that picture. I know you maybe want to.
I lost.
I want you to say nicest guy.
So I always think like if I had an hour with someone, I would freeze. I wouldn't always. I would want to watch someone else talk to.
Interesting.
So if you had an hour, you'd watch Meaningful People.
I'd watch exactly.
I'd
watch you interview Moshe
the
Rabbeinu.
greatest advertisement ever.
Like when people say Moshe Rabbeinu or David HaMelech,
right.
like what would you talk to them about? You have nothing in common. Like I mean, obviously the Torah is eternal, so you have that. But like your life experience is so different. Like if I had an hour with anybody living or dead, like that I could just spend an hour with, just quiet, it would be my wife. Like Pasha, like because it's just total comfort. Like it's like I could just totally be myself. I could just we're just be comfortable for an hour.
Who would you spend that hour with?
Rabbi Lebowitz. No, I don't know. I would.
You guys never had to answer that question.
Luckily, he's alive.
Yeah, we don't. I think it's come up. I probably would want. I think
every day's a different answer.
Can answer. No, I think Rav Moshe Feinstein. I don't know if I'd want to talk to him. I'd probably want to see him.
Rav Moshe
I don't know.
Like, there's something so compelling about Rav Moshe.
I don't know what it is.
When we sat down with Rav Reuven, I was just fixed on the Rosh Yeshiva's face. See what I did there? Because he looks exactly like his father.
Yeah,
he
looks right.
He
So
looks like
like
Rav Moshe, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is the
Yeah.
closest I'll ever get to meeting
But
Rav
Moshe had a
Moshe.
certain anivos and sweetness that like it comes through generations. Like you feel like you know him, even though
Right.
you don't. I mean, it's.
I feel like I'd want to sit down with Mike Tress.
Who's that?
Oh, that's a good one.
Someone mentioned him.
He's not alive.
No, I know. Someone mentioned him. He was a big activist.
He like, how do you describe? Like
He
he didn't
was a
start the
big
Aguda, but
Meaning he was. Yeah, I mean,
he's known, like he went after the Holocaust. He like went to DB camps and he gave the shirt off his back to people. Like he was like
those
the
people
Oscar.
in the post-Holocaust, like immediate post-Holocaust era, that worked to help all these Yidden that lost everything to reacclimate and first of all to save lives, the Vadat Salah and all of that. I mean, those are just remarkable people. If you think about like when we build a shul, like we just built a shul recently, you know, the fundraising and how difficult it is to raise the money to do it. You travel across this country and you see the shuls that were built in the 1950s by people who didn't have 2 nickels, you know, to rub. They had nothing, and they had no home. They didn't own a house.
The Jewish world
they
was
built these shuls. They built these. They were Moser Nefesh for Jewish continuity. It's amazing.
We're basically finished, but I do want to get a little meta with you, only because we have this.
Get a what?
What?
Meta.
Like meta physical? No, that's not the word. Meta, I don't know. You'll see what I mean.
He means like run our test, remember?
Yeah, like
No, here, you'll because it's
a malice.
I think we have a unique opportunity because it's so rare that we have someone that is, if I could call you a fan of the show and actually on the show. So I want to discuss with you again for like, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes, maybe your favorite moments from Meaningful People. Ooh. Or just the episodes that maybe spoke to you a little more than the others. I'm not saying you watched or listened to all of them, but you definitely tweeted out a few quotes.
I listened to a bunch of them, almost all of them for sure. Wow.
That's what I mean by meta.
The Rabbi Bender one was amazing.
Really?
One of the things that was amazing to me about the Rabbi Bender one, first of all, Rabbi Bender is just so real. You know?
Yeah.
Like he's
very straight
We
up.
had him speak in my shul once. We had Rabbi Menachem Penner and Rabbi Bender speak on the same morning. They made like a poster with the two of them like next to each other. It looked like it was a boxing match poster. But he's just so real. And I know him my whole life pretty much. I mean, I don't know him, but like I still don't really know, even though we're quasi mishpacha now. But you know, Rabbi Bender's cousin is the president of Yeshiva University, Rabbi Ari Berman.
Oh wow! I
Is
didn't know that's his cousin.
Yeah, Bender is Berman. Bender is an Americanized
wow.
version of
Really?
Berman. Like
Cool.
all of his,
I didn't know that.
he has
What's
chashva cousins who are like Rosh
wrong with
Yeshiva
Berman?
and
Berman
Panovich.
school?
Right? I don't know. It's one of those strange ones.
It's also like maybe now I'm used to Bender as a Jewish name, but they're like Berman. It sounds too Jewish. We're gonna be Bender.
So now I spend more time with his children, obviously, because you know Baruch
Right.
Ber like runs all the chesed in this community. Who's also an amazing guy.
No, we've
Should
been
also
chasing him
have-
for a while.
Yeah,
which
get
I
him.
think I cornered him
And
last
Rav
week.
David is
hopefully.
on the Vadakashrus
that.
with me, and Rav David Bender is amazing also. It's just such a sweetheart. But there were so many things I didn't know about Rabbi Bender. I didn't know that he had adopted an African-American child.
Right.
like I didn't.
Yeah, I neither know that really.
Yeah.
And like
If you
here's
listened to
someone
my
like,
voice note before the Rabbi Bender one, you would have known that.
he grew up
too
right
late.
here, and like, I mean, I grew up
Right.
right here, and like in his shadow, and I didn't even know this stuff about him. So that was nice. It's like nice when like I have my friends on, you know, like it's always nice to hear like Rav Judah and you know and
That
Rav
was
Ephraim
fun.
and David and you know like you know all the so that's always nice.
That's cool. Is there one episode other than Rabbi Bender that if someone's listening to your episode and you're saying, okay, you know what, they should maybe listen to that episode?
Rebbe and Shirley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How awesome is that from a mechanech to listen to?
Oh my gosh. She's like royalty. I mean, she's
the
like the
queen.
most dignified person. I have a Rebbitzin that my wife and I are very close with who reminds me a lot of her. Or she reminded me a lot of Rebbitzin Lamb, who lives in North Woodmere still. I mentioned her husband before, passed away. There's something about that generation. Rebbitzin Lamb is also, you know, Kanai Nahara, you know, she's not 25 anymore, you know what I'm saying?
She grew up in America.
She grew up in America.
It's like
Yeah, there's something
different.
about it, like with this frumkeit when the whole rest of the world wasn't, you know, and serving Klal Yisrael for her entire life without getting the credit for serving Klal Yisrael for her entire life. Rebbitzin is such a it's so much bigger than being a rabbi, because rabbis get all the positive feedback, and the Rebbetzin just like slaves away, and has to give up all the family time and everything else that she has to be Moshe Nefesh for, and a lot of times be Moshe Nefesh in terms of money and everything else, and they give their lives to Klal Yisrael.
That's really nice.
Rabbi Aryeh Lebowitz, thank you so much for taking out the time to come and speak
Thank
with
you
us.
so much for having me. So great to talk to you guys.
This was fun. This was a lot of fun. Thank you.
I feel like we could talk for even longer. Thank you
we'll
so
have
much.
you back on.
Hope you enjoyed this episode of the Meaningful People podcast. There's one main thing, one big takeaway that I learned from this episode, which is if you walk into any grocery or maybe even El Al, if you say Rabbi Lebowitz, you might get a free flight. Definitely got free groceries.
I think I actually really enjoyed that moment because I got a real hearty laugh from you at that point.
Yeah, who says the word hearty laugh anymore?
Me.
Anyone else? Hearty laugh?
I know a guy.
Yaakov, sometimes you're like an 80-year-old trapped in a 25-year-old body.
I read a lot. I don't read a lot, by the way. I don't read a lot.
You read the back of cereal boxes, maybe,
Yeah, totally. I
It's
love
your
cereal.
type.
So yeah, Rabbi Lebowitz, he was great, and we're doing so many of these episodes. I even turned to Rabbi Lebowitz after. I'm like, it's so funny. The person who's like, no, I'm not so good. I'm not so meaningful. I don't know. And I personally really, really had such a good time and a meaningful time, pun intended. And he's really great. He's really great, and he's also great on obviously check out all his sharing. But if you're not following him on Twitter, if you have Twitter, go follow him. He's great.
Yeah,
what's his handle?
I think it's at BKNW Rabbi.
Right.
At BKNW Rabbi.
And if you're ever in North Woodmere, check out his sharim. He gives out a lot of sharim there.
Go check out his shul.
Yeah. And if you're in high school and you want a Rebbe, you could switch to his yeshiva and be in his class.
He has a yeshiva?
He doesn't have yeshiva. He's a Rebbe in yeshiva.
Which yeshiva?
I hope you guys enjoyed this episode.
What? He's a Rebbe.
I can't do all the research. I don't know. I forgot which one.
He's a Rebbe in a yeshiva?
Yeah, he's a Rebbe in yeshiva. You didn't know that? We listened to the whole thing.
Oh, yeah. Do people think that we sit here while they're listening to it?
I know.
Okay.
Yeah, we did the conversation a while ago.
Just-
If you're still here, thank you for listening. Just subscribe if you're not already subscribed. And
Have yourself a nice day. Ciao, ciao.
Ooh.